their names from us. Remember that they didn't even have last names not too long ago. So there are several genealogy charts for the Queen of England. Starting with this one, it states that she is related to King David, King Solomon, and Moses. Now, as I've shown you guys in the Real Faces of the Bible Part 1, King David is Tutmosis III. His son, King Solomon, is actually Amenhotep. And Amenhotep's son is Akhenaten, who is the real biblical Moses. And all of them were all black Egyptian kings. And they all fought the invading white races of Africa. So the Queen of England is not related to the black Egyptian kings as her fake genealogy chart claims, but she is in fact related to Alexander the Great, who was the conqueror of Egypt. And she conveniently left him out of her genealogy chart and added in the black Egyptian rulers who consecutively ruled Egypt for 39,000 years. And I just want to point out that the Queen's middle name is Alexandra after Alexander the Great, her distant relative. So we see how this genealogy chart is false because we know that she's not related to the native black rulers of Africa, but she is in fact related to the invader of the African lands. So this is the second genealogy chart, and in this one she claims that she is related to the kings and queens of Ireland and Scotland. And as I've said before, if you look at the Fairbairn Book of Crest, you can clearly see that the rulers of Ireland and Scotland were all black, as well as the rulers of all of Europe. They were all black. So we know that the Moors built everything in Europe, and they also ruled Rome. And this was long before the white popes of the Vatican. So another thing that I've explained in another video is Akhenaten's daughter was married to Tutankhamun, and when Tutankhamun was murdered by Horemheb, Akhenaten's daughter came to Scotland. She came to Scotland with an army, with, we don't know how many people, but she came there with many, many people from Egypt. And the name Scotland comes from the anglicized version of her name, and it translates to Scotia. So Scotia is where we get the later version of this as Scotland. So Scotia or Scotland was named after Akhenaten's daughter. And this all happened long before 700 AD, proving that black people from Egypt, from Akhenaten's bloodline, came to Scotland and other parts of Europe, long before the 700 AD timeline that we're given of the Moors coming into Europe. So the same black people who ruled Egypt during the Amarna dynasty came to Scotland and Ireland. So of course the Queen of England claims to be of the bloodline of the kings and queens of Ireland and Scotland because the kings and queens of Ireland and Scotland were Egyptians. So she has to say that she comes from the rulers of Egypt and the rulers of Ireland and Scotland because these people were of the same bloodline. So the last fabrication that I want to show you about the Queen's genealogy is that according to her genealogy, her ancestors are the white Spaniards who invaded South America and later North America. And according to the Queen's genealogy, her Spaniard ancestors gave birth to a man named Charles, who ruled Rome and the Incan Empire of South America. They even produced a false image of Charles, whose real name is Carlos V, and they show him as being a white man. But the real Carlos V was black, and at this time the Moors ruled Spain and South America and Rome. So Carlos V, a black man, a Moor, was the Holy Roman Emperor and the ruler of the Incan Empire of South America. And we can clearly see that the queen's albino and Jewish beast ancestors did not give birth to this black ruler. So when the Queen of England claims to be of the bloodline of the rulers of South America and Rome and Spain and Scotland and Ireland and Egypt, it's all lies. She is not of the bloodline of the black royalty. She is of the bloodline of the invaders, the albinos and beasts. And although the Queen of England doesn't claim to be Catholic or German or a Jew or any of this, she actually just claims to be British. Her father comes from albinos who came from Germany and invaded Rome. And her mother is a Jew. And when it comes to Hitler, he's related to the Queen of England. He was not a German. He was born in Austria. He wasn't even from Germany. So it's obvious that Hitler, the Jewish people, and the Queen of England were all working together. And they perpetuated this lie of the Holocaust. And this is what allowed them to give the Queen of England the authority to give the land to the Jewish people, this land of Israel that's in Africa. And this is why it's important for Black people to know who they are and where they come from, and to know their true history, because we have the Queen of England ruling the earth, and according to her own records, she controls and rules 60% of the landmass on earth. But we have her doing this, and the authority by which she rules 60% of the earth is based on her genealogies, her fake and fabricated genealogies that claim that she is of the bloodline of the Black Moors who ruled Europe, of the Black Egyptians who ruled Kemet, and of the Black Moors who ruled South America. So we can see that her claim to the throne and the reason why she rules the territory that she rules is all based on lies. So one good example of the transatlantic slave trade lies that have been perpetuated by white people is the Aztec couple that was documented in the Library of Congress. This Aztec couple was brought to Britain from Mexico by the Queen of England's mother. So we can see this is one good example of what they did. They would move people around. But as I've said, white people were not capable of transporting millions of slaves during this time. So it's obvious that what they did was not bring people from Africa, but they actually brought people from Ireland and Scotland and other parts of Europe. The people that they brought to the Americas as captives were captives of war who were brought, but not from Africa. They were brought from other parts of Europe, and they belonged to the Black nobility of Europe. Just like they brought the Aztecs to Britain. They didn't transport them very far. And this is the reason why, if you look at the population of Ireland and Scotland today, they're all white, even though we know that the Moors ruled Ireland and Scotland. So what happened to them? Where did all the Black people go? So you have to understand that white people did expel the Moors from certain parts of Europe. Some of them left on their own and they went back to Northeast Africa and Morocco, but other Moors went to different places. And then, yes, there were some of them that were captives of war that were brought to North America. And what the white people did to the Aztecs is a prime example of this, because as they continuously tell us we all came from Africa, we can see that the evidence proves otherwise. Black people were already here in North America and in South America and in all of Europe, long before white people ever set themselves up as kings, before they ever created their first genealogy charts, and before they ever even had a last name.